In part 1, I told you about a room. 1995. Fear as ignition. A framework for urban farming that emerged in a single breath, 30 years before the industry caught up with it. I told you about the 2005 PowerPoint, the metadata, the 7 layers, the 5,000-pound container yield that matched freight farms 5 years later, the community equity model that predated the Jobs Act by a decade, the neighborhoods that became opportunity zones 12 years after I mapped them. And I told you about the elemental opposition principle. The formula: identify the destructive force, reduce it to its elemental composition, find its thermodynamic or chemical opposite, deploy that opposite as a productive input, and close the loop so the system finances itself. I gave you 3 examples: Fleming's mold, maggot therapy, the Deepwater Horizon bacteria. Life kills death in medical history, in wound care, in oil remediation. Part 2 is the proof at scale. What happens when you apply that same 5-step formula not to one ecological problem, but to 9? Not in theory. With specific species names, specific chemistry, specific commercial output streams, specific cost structures, I want to show you something that took me years to see clearly. That the ecological crisis in North America is not 9 separate problems. It is one problem, expressed 9 times with a single architectural solution. And that solution does not cost what the management programs cost. It pays for itself, at scale, by design. That is what this hour is about. Let me take them in order, not by severity, by what they teach. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission has spent over $400 million since 1990 trying to keep Asian carp out of the Great Lakes. Electrical barriers, physical barriers, netting programs, monitoring buoys, $400 million, 50 years, and the fish are still advancing. The management frame asks, how do we stop them? My question was different. I asked, what are they, elementally? They are filter feeders, which is the very mechanism that makes them ecologically dangerous. They consume phytoplankton and zooplankton at rates that collapse the base of the food web for native species. The feeding apparatus that makes them a crisis is also a biological water processing function. They are, in effect, living water filters. Their body composition is the key that unlocks this whole section, 18 to 20% protein by weight. And then there is the fat fraction. Asian carp, particularly bighead and silver carp, carry a body fat percentage between 5 and 15%, heavily concentrated in the viscera and the head cavity. That fat is rich in long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. The same compounds in every fish oil supplement on the shelf at every pharmacy and grocery store in the country. Let me put that in context. The global fish oil supplement market is approximately $2 billion annually and growing. It is supplied primarily from Peruvian anchoveta and Atlantic menhaden, both stocks under significant harvest pressure. The omega-3 fatty acid profile of Asian carp visceral oil is competitive with those sources. But unlike anchoveta or menhaden, the carp population in North American waterways is not a managed stock requiring harvest quotas. It is an uncontrolled, invasive population that management programs are already spending hundreds of millions to reduce. The raw material cost is not a market price. It is the avoided cost of removal. It is, effectively, free. A processing facility positioned on a Great Lakes tributary, accepting bulk carp harvest from the nano-sweep protocol, renders the visceral oil fraction as pharmaceutical-grade fish oil, not the lowest-tier commodity oil. The EPA-DHA concentration and the absence of mercury and PCB accumulation, because carp feed at the base of the food web, not the top, means the oil can be positioned in the premium supplement tier. The fish that is bankrupting the Great Lakes ecosystem is the same fish that belongs in your omega-3 capsule. Beyond premium human-grade fish oil, the secondary fish oil market for livestock and companion animal feed is substantial and less price-sensitive. Omega-3 supplementation in livestock, particularly poultry and swine, improves feed conversion ratios and final product fatty acid profiles, which is a documented value add for egg and pork producers. Canine omega-3 supplementation is a high-growth segment of the pet health market. A mid-grade carp oil, not certified for human supplement use, hits this market cleanly, at volume, with no feedstock cost. Now, the rest of the fish. Whole premium fish to food markets, fresh, frozen, or smoked, targets domestic Asian American communities where silver and bighead carp are already preferred food fish, and export to markets in China and Vietnam, where the species is a commercial commodity. This is not a new market that needs to be created. It exists. The barrier is processing infrastructure, not demand. Fish meal from the trim, bone, and lower-grade carcass material feeds aquaculture operations, including, crucially, the aquaponic pods of the urban farm system. Fish bone processed further yields calcium phosphate as a soil amendment with a phosphorus content competitive with synthetic superphosphate. And here is the output stream that most removal programs have not considered at all: whole fish hydrolysate as liquid organic fertilizer. The carp that are unsuitable for food-grade processing, small individuals, damaged catch, bycatch of non-target junkfish species that come up in the same sweep operations, are not waste. They are feedstock for anaerobic hydrolysis. The process is straightforward. The whole fish, bones and all, is ground and digested in an acid or enzymatic bath that breaks the protein and lipid fractions into amino acid chains and fatty acid components. The resulting liquid concentrate is a high nitrogen, high phosphorus, immediately plant-available fertilizer, fish hydrolysate, that is sold at premium prices in the organic agriculture and home garden markets. The same process applies to any junkfish that comes up in bulk freshwater harvest: drum, gar, buffalo fish, bowfin. Species that are ecologically marginal, commercially ignored, and harvested as bycatch in any aggressive removal program. None of them need to go to a landfill. All of them become fertilizer. The mass balance of the removal operation shifts completely. There is no waste stream. Every pound of fish that comes out of the water has a destination that generates revenue. The protocol I designed uses chitosan-coated magnetic nanoparticles. Chitosan is a biopolymer derived from chitin, the structural material in crustacean and insect exoskeletons. Coated on iron oxide nanoparticles, it creates a carrier that is biocompatible, biodegradable, and magnetically retrievable. The delivery system uses the carp's own chemoreception, Asian carp aggregate, in response to species-specific pheromones, the same chemical signaling that drives their schooling behavior. Bait corridors concentrate the population in defined zones. The nanocarrier is delivered into those zones. The fish absorb it through gill filtration, the same mechanism they use to feed. After 4 to 6 hours, a low-frequency acoustic gradient creates mild sedation and reduces lateral movement. A magnetic sweep array, a series of electromagnetic frames towed through the zone, collects the sedated fish. No nets, no bycatch from non-target native species. The array is selective by the nanoparticles it's retrieving. After 48 to 72 hours of depuration in clean circulating water, which flushes the carrier and any accumulated environmental compounds, the fish enter the processing cascade. The full output stack, ranked by margin: 1. Premium human-grade omega-3 fish oil capsules, highest value per pound. Small volume, high margin. 2. Pet and livestock omega-3 oil, high volume, solid margin. Canine supplements, poultry and swine feed additive. 3. Whole premium food fish, export and domestic Asian American markets. 4. Fish meal for aquaculture and pod systems. 5. Calcium phosphate bone amendment for pod growing media. 6. Whole fish hydrolysate fertilizer, including all junkfish bycatch, liquid organic nitrogen, 0 waste fraction. 6 revenue streams from a fish the government is currently paying to kill. The invasive fish destroying the Great Lakes food base becomes the omega-3 supplement, the dog's daily fish oil, the pod fertilizer, and the liquid nitrogen that grows the neighborhood's leafy greens. The ecological destroyer feeds the ecological restoration at every level of the value chain. Before I move to the second species, I need to put something in the record explicitly. I designed a remediation protocol for removing the top layers of polluted sludge from river and waterway beds. The mechanism: targeted physical disruption of the benthic sediment layer, followed by extraction of the resuspended material before it resettles. The protocol was documented. It was subsequently implemented. It works. I did not receive attribution. I am naming it here because it is directly relevant to what I am about to describe, and because the record needs to be complete. Now, I want to extend the CARP protocol into territory that, to my knowledge, no management program has formally proposed, but it follows directly from the sludge removal work and from the same elemental opposition logic. The question: can Asian carp be deliberately, temporarily introduced into heavily polluted waterways, rivers, industrial tributaries, contaminated harbor zones, as a targeted biological remediation workforce, used to clean the bottom, then extracted once the work is done? Here is the mechanism and why it is scientifically coherent. Asian carp are benthic disturbers. Their feeding and rooting behavior physically resuspends sediment from the bottom. They are also filter feeders. They process the water column continuously, consuming the suspended particulate organic matter they have just disturbed. In a healthy ecosystem, this behavior is destructive because it collapses the phytoplankton base. In a heavily polluted waterway where the primary problem is a top layer of contaminated organic sludge, the exact problem my original protocol addressed mechanically, this behavior becomes useful. The fish are doing the disturbance work. They are the remediation machine. The controlled introduction protocol works in 3 phases. Phase 1. Baseline assessment. Water and sediment testing to characterize the pollutant profile. PCB load, heavy metal concentrations, organic compound presence. This determines the bioaccumulation risk in the harvested fish and sets the parameters for what the output streams will be after extraction. Phase 2. Controlled introduction. Carp are introduced at calculated population density for the target waterway. The nanocarrier protocol, the same pheromone bait and chitosan nanoparticle system, is preloaded into the introduction stock, so the extraction mechanism is already embedded in the population from day 1. There is no establishment risk. Every fish already carries its own recall tag. This is not releasing an invasive species. This is deploying a managed remediation workforce with a built-in retrieval mechanism. The population works the bottom. They resuspend the top sludge layer. They filter and concentrate the organic fraction through their bodies. Over weeks to months, the time frame depends on waterway size and contamination load. The benthic profile improves measurably. Turbidity monitoring, sediment core sampling at defined intervals, tracks the remediation progress. Phase 3. Full extraction. When sediment readings reach target thresholds, the acoustic gradient and magnetic sweep array are activated. The entire introduced population is recalled and collected. No nets, no bycatch, no residual population. Now the question of the output streams post-extraction from a polluted site. This is where I want to be precise, because honesty is part of the methodology. If the pollutant profile includes PCBs or organochlorine compounds, those will bioaccumulate in the lipid fraction, the fish oil. At a contaminated site, the first harvest fish oil stream is compromised for human consumption and likely for food-grade animal use. That stream goes to industrial testing and monitoring use. Fat-soluble contaminant concentration is actually useful for pollution tracking analytics, rather than to supplement production. But the fish hydrolysate fertilizer stream is more resilient. Heavy metals concentrate in liver and bone tissue. The hydrolysis process can be configured to separate those fractions. The resulting liquid fertilizer from clean soft tissue is testable and potentially usable depending on the specific contaminant profile. This is site-specific and requires analysis. I am not claiming blanket usability. The food fish stream. If the site contamination is primarily organic sludge and nutrient load, rather than heavy metals or persistent organic pollutants, which describes many agricultural runoff tributaries, many municipal stormwater-impacted rivers, then post-depuration food safety testing may clear the fish for lower-grade markets. Again, site-specific. The key economic point. Even if the polluted site extraction produces zero food-grade or supplement-grade output, the fish still did the work. The benthic remediation value, the cost it would have taken to mechanically dredge and remove that sludge layer, which my original protocol addressed mechanically, and which was subsequently implemented at cost, is the economic justification for the introduction. The fish are free labor for a dredging operation that otherwise requires heavy equipment, permits, and disposal of the contaminated material removed. And here is the loop-closing property that I want you to notice. The carp that cleaned the polluted river bottom is extracted and tested. If it is clean enough for the oil stream, it goes to supplements. If not, it goes to hydrolysate fertilizer, tested and cleared for the organic fractions. The sludge it consumed and concentrated is now in the fish, not in the river. The fish is the container. You extract the container. Compare that to mechanical dredging. The contaminated sludge is removed from the river and placed somewhere else. A containment cell, a treatment facility, a landfill. The problem has moved. It has not been processed. The carp's remediation workforce model does not move the problem. It digests it. The contamination is metabolized, concentrated in a retrievable biological unit, and then the biological unit is removed. This is the distinction that makes it a different category of solution, not just a variant of the same approach. The trap crop parallel is exact. I showed you the tree of heaven planted deliberately to concentrate spotted lanternfly populations for simultaneous harvest. The polluted tributary is the trap. The carp is the workforce. The nano sweep is the harvest. The principle is identical, a different domain. The same logic. I want to close this section with a statement that belongs in the record. I described the targeted removal of top-layer polluted river sludge before it was implemented. I am now describing its biological extension, using a managed carp population to achieve the same remediation objective through metabolic rather than mechanical means. If this protocol is implemented without attribution, the documentation trail goes back to this video, this timestamp, and the original sludge removal work that preceded it. The record is continuous, the principle is consistent, and the fish that is currently costing $400 million in failed containment is the same fish that can clean the rivers we have already given up on cleaning. But now comes the part that changes the economics of the entire system. Agrilis planipennis, the emerald ash borer. Since its detection in Michigan in 2002, it has killed between 100 and 130 million ash trees across North America. Ecologists project the near-total elimination of North American ash as a functional forest species within this century. The larvae bore under the bark, severing the phloem layer, the vascular system that carries sugars from leaves to roots. The tree starves from the inside. The management responses, insecticides, biological controls, quarantine zones, have slowed the spread marginally. They have not reversed it. Now, what is an emerald ash borer elementally? It is an insect, which means its exoskeleton is chitin, the same structural polymer that chitosan is derived from. This is the connection that changes everything. The nanoparticle carrier for the Asian carp removal protocol requires chitosan. Standard industrial chitosan comes from shellfish processing waste, shrimp and crab shells. It works. But the supply is variable, tied to seafood industry output, and requires significant processing. EAB populations, harvested at scale from affected forests, provide an alternative feedstock for exactly the same chitosan synthesis. The exoskeleton of the beetle destroying the ash forests is the raw material for the nanocarrier that removes the carp from the Great Lakes. One invasive species produces the tool that removes another. And the relationship is not linear. It is reinforcing. As EAB populations are harvested, the chitosan supply to the carp removal program becomes more reliable. As carp removal becomes more efficient, fish meal output to the pods increases. As pod operating costs fall, the system scales faster. Each operation funds the next. The system is self-reinforcing at the molecular level because two separate ecological crises share a chemical architecture. The ash wood itself has additional value. Fraxinus, ash, is a high-quality hardwood historically used in tool handles, flooring, and sports equipment. EAB-killed standing timber represents hundreds of millions of board feet of wood that is currently rotting in place or being cleared as a safety hazard at municipal expense. A coordinated harvest program recovers that timber at zero acquisition cost and converts it to structural lumber, furniture stock, or, in smaller diameter material, biochar feedstock for pod-growing media amendment, Dracaena polymorpha and Dracaena bugensis. Introduced through ballast water from Black Sea shipping in the late 1980s, now the dominant fouling organisms across the Great Lakes, the Mississippi River system, and spreading into western waterways. The economic damage is staggering, $800 million to $1 billion annually in infrastructure fouling alone. They clog water intake pipes, power plants, municipal water systems, industrial facilities, at densities of up to 700,000 individuals per square meter. The shells are razor-edged and cover beaches in concentrations that make recreational use impossible. Native mussel populations, dozens of species, have been functionally eliminated in affected waterways because zebra mussels outcompete them for food and physically smother juveniles. What is a zebra mussel elementally? Its shell is calcium carbonate, limestone, with trace amounts of magnesium. The shell material is structurally identical to the calcium carbonate that agricultural lime is derived from. The same material that cement manufacturers source from quarried limestone. The mussel coating the pipes and killing the beaches is, pound for pound, agricultural lime and bioconcrete feedstock. Current removal methods, high-pressure hot water, potassium chloride treatments, chlorination, kill the mussels and leave the shells in place, or require expensive vacuum removal. The shells are treated as waste. The protocol redesigns removal as harvest. Pneumatic vacuum collection systems, essentially industrial shop vacs scaled to municipal infrastructure, strip fouled intake pipes and intake structures. Beach accumulations are mechanically collected. The shell material goes through a rotary kiln at approximately 900 degrees Celsius, which drives off CO2 and produces quicklime, CaO, a high-grade agricultural amendment and cement raw material. Quicklime for the pods, pH management in aquaponic growing media, is a recurring operational cost. Quicklime and hydrated lime are standard amendments. Producing it from mussel shells at zero feedstock cost eliminates a supply line and a budget line simultaneously. Processed shell aggregate, unburned sorted by size, functions as a structural aggregate in bioconcrete formulations, with the added benefit of its calcium carbonate chemistry, contributing to the alkalinity buffer in concrete exposed to freshwater environments. Several university materials, science programs have tested mussel shell aggregate in concrete and found compressive strength equivalence with conventional aggregate at replacement rates up to 30%. The mussel costing $1 billion a year to manage becomes the agricultural lime and the concrete. The ecological destroyer builds the ecological infrastructure. Scrofa, the feral pig. 6 million animals across 35 U.S. states, expanding northward at roughly 12 miles per year. $2.5 billion in agricultural crop damage annually, rooting, trampling, and consuming grain, vegetables, and tree crops. Disease vectors for pseudorabies and brucellosis. Soil destabilizers. Their rooting behavior disrupts root systems, accelerates erosion, and reduces soil carbon. USDA Wildlife Services kills approximately 400,000 per year. Aerial gunning, trapping, toxicants, at enormous per-animal cost, with no measurable impact on population trajectory. The reproduction rate, sows producing 2 litters of 4 to 8 piglets per year, outpaces removal. What is a wild boar elementally? A warm-blooded, free-ranging mammal consuming a natural diet of roots, grain, nuts, and small animals. It is, by every meaningful agricultural standard, a grass-fed, free-range, high-protein livestock animal. One that requires zero feed input, zero housing cost, zero veterinary expense until the moment of harvest. Feral pork as a food product is underutilized, primarily because of inconsistent processing infrastructure, not because of demand. Wild boar is a premium restaurant meat in Europe. The American market for game and heritage pork is growing. The processing barrier, bringing a wild-caught animal into a USDA-inspected processing chain, is logistical, not fundamental. 3 commercial output streams: premium whole carcass and cuts to the restaurant and specialty grocery market, trim and lower-grade cuts processed to hyperallergenic pet food protein, wild-caught, single-protein, grain-free, and rendered lard for biolubricants and industrial release agents, a growing market as petroleum-based lubricants face regulatory pressure. The animal destroying the crops is itself a crop. The removal operation is the harvest. The cost of removal becomes the revenue of the harvest. Pueraria montana var. Lobata. Introduced from Japan in 1876 as an ornamental, promoted by the U.S. Soil Conservation Service through the 1950s for erosion control, now covering 8 to 10 million acres of the American South. It grows at a rate of up to 1 foot per day under optimal conditions. It smothers trees, utility infrastructure, abandoned structures, roadsides, anything stationary. Once established on a hillside, complete eradication requires years of repeated herbicide application. The root system can extend 30 feet down and survive defoliation multiple times. What is kudzu elementally? It is a legume, which means it is a nitrogen fixer. Its root nodules harbor rhizobial bacteria that convert atmospheric nitrogen to ammonia, enriching the soil beneath it. It is growing at the fastest rate of any plant species in its range, which means it is converting solar energy to biomass at an extraordinary rate. The above-ground vine is cellulosic fiber. The leaves contain 15 to 18% crude protein on a dry matter basis. The root contains starch. The total biomass per acre is enormous. The protocol uses autonomous solar drones, fixed-wing or multi-rotor platforms with onboard LiDAR and camera systems that continuously patrol target areas and mechanically shear the growing vine crowns. The kudzu root system will regrow from the crown cut, which in a management context is the nightmare. In a harvest framework, the perpetual regrowth is a perpetual supply. You are not trying to kill it, you are farming it. 3 output streams. Cellulosic fiber for industrial bioplastics. Kudzu cellulose has been tested in bioplastic formulations with results comparable to agricultural hemp. Livestock feed at the dried protein percentage noted above, which is competitive with alfalfa hay, and biodegradable packaging material from pressed vine fiber, appropriate for pod produce packaging and reducing the plastic waste footprint of the urban farm supply chain. The autonomous drone fleet is the capital investment. Ongoing operational cost is energy, solar, and maintenance. The harvest is the revenue. The vine that is bankrupting southern municipalities becomes the packaging material for the urban farm that is feeding their neighborhoods. I want to treat these two together because the management programs treat them separately, and that separation is exactly what makes the management programs inefficient. Lycorma delicatula, the spotted lanternfly, first detected in Pennsylvania in 2014, now present across 14 states and spreading. It feeds on over 70 plant species, with particular preference for Ailanthus altissima, tree of heaven, and critical agricultural crops, grapes, hops, apples, peaches. The feeding mechanism pierces plant tissue and extracts sap. Heavy infestations produce so much honeydew excretion that it coats surfaces and promotes black sooty mold, reducing photosynthesis and accelerating tree decline. Pennsylvania alone estimates $325 million in potential annual losses if populations are not controlled. Ailanthus altissima, tree of heaven, was introduced from China in the 1700s as a food plant for silkworms. It escaped cultivation and is now established across every continental U.S. state. It grows in conditions that would kill almost anything else: compacted urban soil, cracked pavement, stream banks, contaminated brownfield sites. It is allelopathic. Its roots produce compounds that suppress competing native plants. It has no significant native predators or pathogens. Most removal programs find that cutting it down stimulates aggressive root sprouting that produces a denser canopy than the original tree. Now, the framework does not ask how to stop each. It asks what each is. The spotted lanternfly's exoskeleton is chitin, the same chitosan feedstock as the emerald ash borer. Each dead lanternfly is a micro-contribution to the same supply chain. Ailanthus altissima roots and bark contain ailanthone, a natural sesquiterpene lactone with documented herbicidal activity. Studies have shown it to be effective against over 30 weed species. It is, in concentrated extract form, a natural organic herbicide appropriate for podweed management, replacing synthetic herbicides with a compound produced by the invasive tree being removed. The operational integration: plant Ailanthus strategically as a trap crop in areas of high lanternfly pressure. The lanternfly's preference for tree of heaven concentrates the pest population in defined, manageable areas. Harvest both simultaneously. Vacuum collection of lanternfly populations from the trap crop canopy, followed by Ailanthus removal and root extraction for ailanthone processing. 2 invasive species. 1 removal operation. Lanternfly chitin to chitosan pipeline. Ailanthone to pod herbicide management. The tree that destroys native plant communities produces the herbicide that manages weeds in the system, restoring them. Rhinella marina. Introduced to Queensland, Australia in 1935 to control cane beetles in sugar plantations. A management program that failed completely because the toads preferred to stay on the ground rather than climb the sugar cane where the beetles lived. From that introduction, the population has expanded to cover over 1 million square kilometers of Australia and poses a serious and ongoing ecological threat in Florida, Hawaii, and across Central America. The toxin, bufadienolide, is produced in the parotid glands on the toad's shoulders. It is a cardiac glycoside with structural similarities to digitalis compounds. In the concentrations produced by the toad, ingestion kills dogs, native predators, and juvenile crocodilians. The ecological impact through naive predator poisoning is severe. What is a cane toad, elementally? A high-protein, high-moisture amphibian producing a structurally complex cardiac glycoside in commercially significant concentrations. Bufadienolide compounds are under active research as cytotoxic agents in cancer biology, specifically for their apoptosis-inducing properties in certain tumor cell lines. The research literature on toad-derived bufadienolides as anti-cancer leads is substantial, primarily from Chinese and Brazilian pharmacological programs. Pharmaceutical-grade isolation of specific bufadienolide fractions from controlled toad harvest is technically feasible. Cane toad skin also yields leather, a distinctive patterned material already in commercial use in Australia through several cottage industry processors. Toad leather goods command premium prices in niche fashion and accessories. The invasive becomes inventory.